So let me just start by, I wrote a book last year before the crisis hit. So this book actually was really talking about how education has been in crisis for a long time in many ways. And as the shift from achievement to equity to well-being, I think that says a lot about the changes we need. And so this is, the book was really trying to capture how students are reacting to policies and implementations. I know our audience are more policymakers and trying to implement something, but with this book, was trying to track down to say how students are reacting. The general idea is that we followed many schools, many classes, by the way, in the US, in Australia, in Canada, actually, so what we discover is that the students generally who are feeling well, who are doing well, are those who are not necessarily following what the policymakers want them to do. So that's actually what's interesting. So they are actually more taking advantage of their own space, freedom. They become owners of their own learning. They go seek knowledge, they drive, they find partners, they go beyond their classrooms. So that was really quite fascinating to me. And with this book was finding to say, so how relevant is policy? And so I went back again to say, why am I thinking about this? So I had a book that was 2 years ago. I wrote another book called What Works May Hurt. This has a lot to do with the evidence-based movement. So I was trying to say, okay, because now since the 1990s, we've been talking about education needs to become evidence-based. And so we need to look for what works. But then in policies, you always find what works can hurt, what you call side effects. Amazingly, right now during COVID, it's actually we're tracking safety as first. But a lot of policies, when it works, it can hurt. I don't have time to go through all these examples, but I do want to give you the example here. Look at this one. I just took PISA. Basically, if the students are afraid, they're fearful of losing, improves their learning. Now, that's not a good sign. Improves their test scores. I just took this thing. It's not a good sign because you want the students to desire to succeed rather than trying to fear of failure as the motivator. So that's one thing. So I look at this data. I said, how does that work? This happens across systems, within systems. And which is fascinating in that regard. You don't have to read everything I put up here. If you want to read more, you can get on my website. It's all on my website. They also look at how life satisfaction and reading performance are all kind of negatively correlated with nations. And this is not new. I think ever since PISA was trying to do the well-being, you've seen this happening across. Then I use growth mindset as another piece of information. Growth mindset actually works to hurt students in China based on the PISA data, PISA scores. So how does all of this work and doesn't work? And then you see this, this is the standard way people are trying to understand success. So I'm always look at, if you get up by the correlation 0.5, that's quite good, significant. Now, I'm looking at this. So there's two groups here at the bottom and to the top. They are the ones who contribute to the 0.5. And the ones from here, they are distractors. So if you look at, you have 100 students. I think I heard someone from Ireland talking about this one. It might help a group of students. It can hurt other students. So if I go back here, this is more of a judgment about outcomes. Education has so many different outcomes. They do not always go together. So if you have one outcome, in order to improve your test scores, you sacrifice life satisfaction. Or in order to improve your short-term test scores, you sacrifice long-term outcomes. Is that valuable? So this is the outcome compression. When you're talking about your equity, inclusion, how does that work? And then we also have to think about, if it hurts somebody, does it work? Remember, policy is trying to apply to a lot of people. However, in real life, we have individuals to deal with. So this is what's happening now. I think one of the vaccine companies stopped for a day, I think in the UK, for trying the third trial, and because one person was not feeling well. Now in education policies, when we make policies, when do we think about the individuals? So that's where the background, I came to. So then I was thinking about this. I wrote another book. I said, heck, I want to try to push for a different vision, to see if it's possible for educators, for policymakers to think differently. So this book was really about how each and every individual can become great and unique. That was so the starting point is this, is that we have billions of students. Every one of them are so different from each other. And they are different because of innate abilities, interacting with social experiences. They're different. The different students, even in Uruguay, even in Saskatchewan, the students are different. They have different interests, different capacities, different contexts, different places to succeed. How do we help each and every student to become successful? Because I'm coming from the classroom. I'm looking at how each student can become successful. And in essence, the idea that came out of this research was written that from this, let's take a look at from the positive psychology or humanistic psychology. What makes individuals happy is that they can realize their natural born potential or whatever they have, that they could take action, that they could use their action to benefit other people. So that is where the angle comes in from this. So then I just finished another book, and I'll come down to the point. Is that this just came out from ASCD. Michael Weimer and I work on this one. Is if a student is a human being, human beings all should have the rights to self-determination. All human beings should have the right to self-determination. But in schools, when do our students have that? I think a lot of governments, I'm not familiar with all your governments. I know some of you are trying to, for example, they create a curriculum, they create a classroom, they create a school, they wait for students to come. But students are seldom the target. All students are seldom, seldom the partner of those changes. When I heard about, a lot of policies, we talk about, you look at our education reforms, whether it's out of OECD, out of the US, Australia, or China, and different parts of the world, we always try to change the curriculum, assessment, professional development for teachers and school leaders. But when do we say, okay, let's liberate the students from the curriculum? And could we do something about that piece? So here are some suggestions. I've been thinking about a curriculum. So what if we have a curriculum that's actually personalizable? I don't like right now a lot of personalized learning based on computers. I think that's a mistake. That's just learning from the 1940s, 50s. I think that's silly. It's because that's predetermined. So can we imagine a curriculum? First of all, we have a fairly small national curriculum, or societal curriculum in Canada. Whether you are in Nova Scotia, Saskatchewan, or in Wales, but a small, maybe 1/3 of that. That truly highlights what everybody in that society should know and be able to do. Highlights very short, and its cultural values, its societal norms, social norms of a society. So that's a small piece. And by the way, I really want to emphasize the cultural aspects of a country, a province, a state. That's very significant. I think education, by the way, many of you might know this, I'm a big critic of PISA and OECD, of global competition. I think that globally speaking, schools have been driven to teach kids how to read and how to do the math, not how to be a good person. That's what I think. I blame right now. I think Beatrice is absolutely right. COVID has changed a lot of things. COVID has changed. COVID also has, I think, made it more clear that different countries are not getting along very well. So that's what I'm thinking about. So how different societies do this. So we are in a truly transformation. I don't know how the society will become, because I was also born and raised in China. So I have a job in China. I'm Chinese, American, Australian. So I kind of do all this, understand this thing. It's not going well, but every society should have the right on behalf of taxpayers to say what we want our students to do, but that should be a very small part. Then I think a school representing a local society, a local community, should have a say in what students learn as well. So there's external things. This is what I call floor expectations. Floor. I think right now when I talk to government policymakers, they have a big challenge, is that they say, okay, let's prescribe a whole curriculum for all our students so they can be successful. I don't think so. I think governments and schools can prescribe the floor, not the ceiling. So that is, the government and schools prescribe a certain levels of curriculum. Then we have a big part that's personalized, that students, based on their strength, based on their interest, their passion, to construct that. So each school, you don't have one curriculum, you have many, many different curricula for students. Different students can do this. And that, of course, would necessitate big changes in pedagogy, in big, changes in many different ways. And that might drive well-being of students, because we want students to become truly an owner of the change. When you talk about implementation, I think I was impressed with Beatrice talk about engagement of the stakeholder. I think part of the engagement is to enable them to do certain things. Andy was powerful yesterday. When I was listening to Andy, he said, okay, we are creating a different society. We're creating a different school, but ultimately it is our students who will make that society possible. It's very much John Dewey is talking about, is that ultimately our students. So therefore we need to enable our students to become the creators of their curriculum and how we can work with them to drive that. I am sorry, I'm very actually, I doubt any efforts to drive social emotional learning and equity from the top will ultimately work. I've written an article about that. I'm not going to show you that. That's from Kappa Delta Pi. I just wrote that the next war in education will be about social emotional learning. So this is what I'm thinking about. What should students do? I would hope students as young as kindergarten, they can have the right to self-determination. They can work with the teacher to negotiate the curriculum. They can also influence their learning environments. That is what is outside. So not only what they are learning as self-determined learner, but also their learning environments. So they can contribute through various ways and means to do that and to drive the change of learning environments. But the last point I want to say, how can school help students, especially older students, maybe secondary school students, to become citizens of the world? And many of you, of course, Greta Thunberg is a good example, because today's students, from all research we've seen, are different from previous. They have, they are quite active. They have access to a lot of technology. They can be global. They are digital, and they've been doing that. Why shouldn't we involve them in a lot more global, a lot more digital technologies so they can learn differently. So let's think about this based on COVID. Many of you are fighting, but nobody's fighting as hard as we in the US. Americans, were suffering the most, okay? So if you can imagine that, imagine students are in school, out of school. They can be in school one day, they are out of school another day, they're half day out there. What does that mean? If students are self-determined, if students can manage their own learning, that's a very different game. Students then will seek learning opportunities from different places. Students, because they're disconnected physically, they can be more globally connected. I've been running actually different camps to try this idea of students from different countries working together. I've seen a lot of efforts trying to do this as well. So for you as ARC, as think about, can your systems create opportunities so students can be engaged in those models? And can you have policies? You know, in Uruguay, I think if you build those learning centers, technology centers, can that center serve students beyond the school? I agree with Andy. Students still need physical space to learn, to interact. But at the same time, I think the role of schooling should change. That the schools should not only be serving our students, you can pop in to be online, offline, interacting with others. I'm seeing a lot of in the US pods, student organized learning centers, places, a lot of different players in this game right now. So in the end, what I'm going to solve, because I really want to have some conversations and I threw out a lot of things. I want to suggest would come to the technology. So I wrote this book about 5-6 years ago. So my suggestion to when you are dealing with technology is never send a human to do a machine's job. I don't think education systems have done this very well. What we need to invite our teachers, our school leaders, to analyze what in education has to be done by technology, must be done by technology, can be done better or easier by technology than human beings. Then place human beings to do something else. For example, we can say right now, in terms of individualized learning, just knowledge and content, they can get online. They don't need a teacher. The teacher's role is as a life coach, as a curator of learning opportunities to drive this change. So let me end this. This is actually the last thing I have. And so what I was basically trying to say, about really 3 things. One, I really believe policymaking needs to create more space to invite students to become owners of their learning. I think that's possible, that can be done, that has been done in different places. We have arrived at a different time. A person truly can learn something, from a technology, from other places. They can interact with different people. The second point is that I really believe global competency, global connection will become very important. Right now, we're fighting this war. I'm really saddened by all this war that's been going on between different countries. Our youth, when they build a more equitable society, inclusive society, they are the creators. We are not getting them ready for the future. We're getting them to create the future, our retirement. So that's really important. So they are the creators of our retirement. So how do we help them become creators, not just recipients? And finally, I think we do have to reanalyze technology, not as part of a classroom, but rather as something separate, and then rethink about schooling. So my end point is, I think, Steve, you guys were talking about using different language. Many of you have heard about this thing called the grammar of schooling, like Cuban died a long time ago. And we're not able to change the grammar of schooling, because that's the grammar, that's the schooling. But what if we drop schooling, change into education? If we change the language, the grammar would be different. So I completely endorse your idea about changing the language, using different words to do this. So I'm going to stop there and take questions or discussions. Thank you very much.